When it comes to mental health, it touches everyone, but it's often a silent subject in many communities of color or immigrant communities with negative stigmas attached. When it's hard to find a safe space to have these tough conversations, finding representation through things like art and movies can be such a savior for those who are struggling, which is why the film Definition Please has gotten so much buzz and attention.
That is correct.
Definition Please is about Monica Chowdhury, who became a national spelling bee champ as a child and who as an adult hasn't necessarily seen that success translate into the expectations everyone else has had for her. This film also tackles mental health through Monica's family dynamic with her mother and her brother Sonny, who comes back to town around the anniversary of their father's death. We are joined now by Sujata, who is the director, producer, wrote this film, and also stars in it as the main character, Monica Chowdhury. Sujata, thank you so much for joining us on LX today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
What was the inspiration or the idea for Definition Please?
I won my 4th grade spelling bee, which you think is a big deal, but it's not because there were only 10 people in my grade. And I went on to regionals, very excited, but I got up to in the first round and I lost. So from then on, I began to be fascinated by the spelling bees on ESPN. And I would watch it every year. And I would also notice that most of the time it seemed to be a South Asian American kid winning the spelling bee. Fast forward to 2015, I'm in a UCB sketch writing class, and one of my sketches was entitled, "Where Are They Now? Spelling Bee Winners, Spelling Bee Champs." And I decided that one of the winners turns out to be a loser, whereas most of the winners are not losers and they're working at NASA and robot scientists. I took that little 4-page sketch and I turned it into a feature film.
So you mentioned there sort of this expectation or idea that we have about a lot of these winners or South Asian American kids. There's the expectation, I'm Nigerian American, from your parents where it's like doctor, engineer, lawyer, you know, you have the triple threat of careers that you can pursue. You sort of challenge this idea of the model minority myth. So I wanted to ask, what was the message that you kind of wanted to parlay to people that watch this movie when it comes to that specific idea?
As an actor, I've been auditioning for a lot of roles throughout the years, and a lot of them are exactly what you said. We're doctors, we're engineers, we're very successful. And I look around and I'm like, no, we're all kinds of things. And I was just interested in a very real look at this one young woman who was supposed to be on this path to being a model minority and then somehow gets lost along the way. And it was just really important for me to show a different side of the immigrant story.
You mentioned a different side of the immigrant story. This film tackles some kind of tough mental health conversations, and it's done through this really beautiful family dynamic we see with Monica and her mother and her brother in this film. And you tackle things like, no spoilers here, but bipolar disorder, which we traditionally don't really see in these films about South Asian communities or South Asian American communities. What went into creating that story around this family dynamic when it comes to mental health in South Asian communities?
I grew up in a community that was a very white suburb of Pennsylvania, had a great childhood, but also there are 3 temples in the region. So on the weekends, I was hanging out with my Indian American friends and had this amazing community where I didn't really have to choose between cultures. And within that Asian American community, I noticed that there was a lot of stress and pressure put on these kids, my friends, and they'd be taking like 10 AP classes at once, trying to get into Harvard, Yale, Brown, and it was just a lot of stress. And the parents would be surprised when one of them would run away from home or when they would have a breakdown. Me and my friends were like, oh, they're like depressed, like they need help, you know, but nobody was talking about it. And I think that really is something that a lot of immigrant families deal with, where you don't want to talk about the bad things, but you talk about the good things. You talk about who's getting married, you talk about pregnancies, you talk about what colleges you're getting into, but you don't talk about the bad stuff. You keep it secret and you hold it inside.
There's a lot of times when we see these films, the mental health aspect is sort of focused singularly on that main character, right? And this film sort of takes a wider lens, and it's the impact or the weight that mental health struggles can have on loved ones surrounding somebody that's kind of dealing with mental health struggles. Was there a particular reason why you wanted to show that through a family versus just the singular like main character?
There's mental illness in my extended family, and my personal experience is that I've been, the support, what do I do? I don't know what to do in this. Sometimes, I clammed up in the past and had no idea when someone wanted me to go to therapy with them and I was 14 and I was like, no, what is that? I don't want to do that. And Monica, the reason that she isn't able to achieve what she can achieve is because of these familial conflicts that are happening, especially with mental illness in her immediate family. So it was really important for me to show how the rest of the family handled the mental illness because everyone handled it differently.
When it comes to representation and authentic stories from communities of color, what do you hope the message that your movie sort of portrays for people that maybe don't know about those experiences?
I really did make this movie for South Asian Americans, and I was not aware that there was going to be a bigger demographic for it. And once Asian Americans started saying good things about it, and Black Americans and even white Americans, I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. What's happening? And so I think what I did was I made a really specific, authentic story that is telling a universal truth. Like, I wanted to make this authentic story so that, first of all, people in our immigrant communities can start talking about mental illness and communicate about it, but also it's about connecting to other cultures and recognizing that we are all in this together.
Thank you so much for the time, Sujata, and good luck going forward.
Thank you so much, Ngazi. It was awesome.